All right, okay. Good morning. My name is Andy. I'm a program manager on the WDG team, and I work on Windows Analytics and Device Health. And this is Matthew here. He also works with me on Device Health, and today we're going to show you some awesome stuff. So to give you guys a brief overview of what Windows Analytics is, I'll give you a quick overview. So upgrade readiness is one of the solutions within Windows Analytics, which is all about getting your devices up to date with Windows 10. So it evaluates if your Windows 7 and 8 devices are ready to upgrade by looking at app and driver compatibility issues. The next solution within Windows Analytics is update compliance, and that's essentially once you're on Windows 10, you want to ensure that you're up to date with the latest OS updates and security patches. And then what we're here today to talk about, which is Device Health, which is all about surfacing end user impacting issues to IT so that you can actually remediate those issues for your users. So I want to set the stage with something that some of us are familiar with, or maybe too familiar with. So I'm going to have Matthew here log into an account here to demonstrate that. So while we're logging into this account, I kind of want to share a story that we heard from one of our customers, which is when new employees come and join this one enterprise, they tell their employees to actually turn on their devices and log into their accounts when they turn into this one intersection of the road. It's about a 1 mile to 2 mile stretch of road. And by the time they actually park their cars and actually walk into the office, the device would have finally logged into the account. And that just absolutely baffles me. Like, I can't believe people are still having these types of experiences with Windows. Like, that's just ridiculous. And speaking of really long login times, what's going on over here?
It was really fast until I joined the domain.
Ooh. So, let's see. Sorry, like in hindsight, maybe we should have actually logged into this account before we started this presentation.
You're on the shuttle?
Yeah, maybe. Oh, great. I'm sorry about this. Like, maybe we should have done what our customer did and actually logged into the account. Like, you know, in this day and age, why do we have to do that? And this really shouldn't be happening, right? You know, why is our device actually a productivity obstacle rather than a productivity device, right? So IT really has an opportunity here to become the hero where they can actually optimize device requirements, device policies, drivers, and apps so that they can actually ensure that their end users are actually productive. So why is this such an issue? Why do we still have this problem today? Why haven't we solved this problem? So we spoke to a bunch of enterprises, and we found that most enterprises don't really have a feedback loop that tells them what their end users are experiencing. So today we're here to just do that. We're talking about device health, and we're trying to provide IT that feedback loop so that IT can become the hero of the enterprise. So I'm going to pass it off to Matthew, who's going to show you all about device health and show you how it works.
Great. Thanks, Andy. How do you hear me? Everybody can hear me okay? Typically, people need me to take off the microphone rather than add a microphone. If I see you covering your ears, I'll move the microphone further away. Just as an aside, you guys get the green version too, right? Because you're running Windows Insider builds. That's right. Yeah, that's how you get the green version. So I hope you're all running Windows Insider builds. As Andy said, we all, we're familiar with these issues. As IT pros, we've been fighting with them for years, and decades in some cases, of device stability, device responsiveness, and how to balance security and control versus user productivity. And today we're adding those insights into Windows so that you just get that for free. You can just, free with an asterisk by it. We'll come back to that. And it just makes sense, right? Like, we can talk about device crashes, we can talk about logons, and we'll explore the details here. But the way I think about this is, it's 2017. If I buy a fancy doorbell, it comes with a cloud service that I can use to interact with it and monitor it and see what's going on. Enterprise Windows should be the same way, right? It should just come with a cloud service that lets you monitor and understand what's going on and interact with it. And Windows Analytics is part of that solution, and specifically device health. So let's explore the features that we're releasing in device health, and we'll explore some of the future features that we're about to release in device health and kind of iterate from there. It's a short session, so we may not get to a lot of Q&A. We'll try to get some in, but there's a Windows Analytics booth down on the show floor, the expo floor, so we'll be there for follow-up conversations and questions. So please join us there for Q&A, as I'm sure we'll run out of time here. The first feature that we're covering in device health, or the first user scenario, the first disruptive user annoyance scenario that we're covering in device health is kernel mode crashes, like the green screen of death or the blue screen of death that you saw in my example. And that's in the device reliability section. So we pivot this two ways. First is by device, and get the mouse over there, I'll zoom in a little bit. So we can see which devices are crashing. This device first pivot is useful, first of all, just to contextualize the data. One thing we've noticed interacting with customers is whenever we start to light up Windows Analytics data, the first thing that people want to see is machine names, because it makes it feel real. Like, yes, this is really about my environment. These are things that really happened. So the device first pivot gives you that sense of familiarity, the sense that this is really describing my environment, and allows you to check for frequently crashing devices. So there may be some devices out there that are just, they've seen better days, and they just need to get the hook. In other cases, it may be a more subtle change, like a driver update, and we'll get to that next. There are also cases where, even if a device isn't crashing a lot, you might want to use this information to keep track of certain devices. I think we've all experienced that, all devices are equal, but some devices are more equal than others. VIP laptops, maybe kiosks. There's some machines where it's never okay to crash. And you can use this information to keep track of those. For a given machine, we can click through and see details like when did it crash, and some diagnostic hints about the crash itself, such as what was the module or the driver name column that was associated with the crash. That gives me starts the debugging juices flowing, like, oh, it's a video driver or a network driver. That gives me something to go work on, whether it's individual troubleshooting or it's working with the vendor to work through an issue here. Now, the failure ID that you see exposed, that may look like this opaque, and it is opaque, it's a GUID, but we're driving for consistency across the ecosystem. So the same failure ID that you would see here, an OEM like a Dell or a Lenovo can potentially see in reports, other reports that they get from Microsoft. So by passing along information like the module name, even the worst case where you can't solve it yourself and you have to call say OEM support, having these little extra bits of information like the failure ID and the module and versions and so forth can accelerate, by weeks, data gathering and the troubleshooting process. So I think the device view is interesting, but what's even more interesting to me is the driver view. Because we're talking about kernel mode crashes. And so for a kernel mode crash, like a blue screen, it has to be a kernel mode component that calls KE bug check. And in many cases, that's going to be a driver, kernel mode drivers, right? And so if I'm interested not in specific devices, but in the health of the herd, like how can I just reduce crashes overall in my environment? That's where the driver view becomes really interesting. So I can see which drivers have some kind of association with the highest numbers of crashes in my environment, or crashes across the highest numbers of machines. So right away I can gauge, oh yeah, by updating this one driver I could potentially save, unblock a lot of employee productivity. Now, if we click on a given driver, typically people click on whichever one happens to be the most active in their environment, we can see a trend, is it crashing more devices this week or less devices this week, so we get a sense of where we might need to take action. We also get this detailed, that was weird. Oh. I have backup screenshots in the deck in case the demo fails, because networks. But the backup screenshots were so good that they fooled me. I was literally trying to click on the screenshot. So once you click through, and you can go, spelunking through this information and do queries and sort by and group by, but we try to give you a guided tour of the information to reduce the amount of investment and time and effort that it takes to derive some insights from this. So in this case, for this driver, we're showing the trend, and we also have this detailed version table, which lets you know in my environment, what are all the different versions of this driver that are out there? And to what extent do those versions matter as it relates to kernel mode crashes, blue screens? So in this example, we can see that there's one version of this driver that is crashing on, it's the fourth line down in the table. It's crashing on 10% of the devices where it's installed. So yeah, it's pretty terrible. There are other versions of this same driver that are crashing on less than 1% of the devices where they're installed. So I'm probably going to prioritize deploying that version. Now, we have a great story of this with Microsoft IT, and this is a paper that you can download and explore. It went live yesterday. That same graph that I was just showing you in the live Device Health portal or Windows Analytics portal, this is Microsoft IT's version of that graph in the paper that they just published yesterday. And the labels are really small. Don't worry about those. I'll tell the story. All you need to know is that the line goes like this. When they first started looking at this data, they saw that there was one particular driver, it was a network driver, that was associated with every 2 weeks. Most of the numbers we present here are over 2-week windows, so it smooths out weekends and you get a long-term sense of what's going on. For every 2 weeks, there was this one network driver that was associated with about 6,000 crashes across 3,000 something devices. 6,000 crashes. So they started adding up, well, how much employee time does that probably mean? You could make different estimates here. They estimated, let's say 15 minutes of lost productivity by the time you reboot, rejoin meetings, and recover documents and all that. So let's guess, say 15 minutes, could be much worse in some cases, but on average, let's say 15 minutes of lost productivity. So 6,000 crashes at 15 minutes apiece, you start to work out the math, and it's almost 200 FTEs, 200 full-time employees worth of company bandwidth. So we want to do something about this. So what can we do about it? Well, that's where we get, again, to the version table. So they looked at the version table like the one I just showed you, except it was a different driver. And they could see that there was one version, in this case we got lucky, it was the most recent version, that seemed to be behaving in our environment much better than all the other versions. So they prioritized deploying that newer version, and this graph is the result. This shows, in this case, the left and right ones look the same because one is percentage and one is count. They both go like this, which is the good news. So by deploying this particular version of this particular driver, they reduced the crashes from around 6,000 crashes every 2 weeks across 3,000 something devices down to approaching 0. And again, that's almost 200 FTEs worth of company time. That one change, returned back to the company. Now, these are the kinds of outcomes that we're hoping all of you can drive toward, all of us can drive toward, using the information through Windows Analytics and Device Health. We want to make people more productive, and we want to make IT the hero, not the villain in the enterprise productivity story. Okay, back to our portal. So Andy mentioned earlier there's 3 device health solutions: upgrade readiness, update compliance, and device health. To get these device health views that I've been showing you, you add the device health solution to an OMS workspace, then you can click in and get these various views. So we started with the device reliability section, which again is all about blue screen crashes by device, by driver. So now let's move on, because there's more to device health than blue screens. The next feature that we have lit up in our public preview today, so if you go turn this on right this second in your environment, the second thing that you'll see is Windows Information Protection Learning. The way this works is, so Windows Information Protection is a feature of Windows 10 that lets you separate work apps and work data from personal apps and personal data. So for example, even though I'm logged on with the same user account that has access to, say, some secret work doc, Windows Information Protection can configure your machine such that you're allowed to open that super secret work doc in, say, Microsoft Word, but you're not allowed to open it in, say, a social media app. So that's Windows Information Protection. And as with any boundary-based system, whether it's firewalls or whether it's any kind of permission boundary-based system, the hard part is getting the permissions right. Right? We all spend a lot of time trying to get firewall rules right or trying to get app whitelisting rules right. So WIP learning is all about making that easier for the admin. What WIP learning does is it analyzes user behavior as it relates to the WIP rules that you have published. And this works even if you're in silent mode, so it's not actually blocking anybody yet. You can just learn. And you can see which apps are hitting your rule boundaries so that you can adjust them as needed. So you might see, for example, a great example that the WIP team shared with me the other day was Notepad++. A lot of folks use Notepad++. People were trying to open work data, technical data in Notepad++, but we didn't have a WIP rule for that, so it was disrupting people and affecting their productivity, their device experience. So, and that popped right up here. We could see, oh yeah, people are trying to use Notepad++. Yeah, we think we want to allow that. So you can copy the value right from here and paste it into Intune or SCCM, where you master your Windows Information Protection rules. And let's do Skype, for example. Just as before, we can see trends, we can see details of which apps on which devices. So I can copy the value from here, paste it into, say, Intune or SCCM, create a new rule in just a few seconds. And then the expectation is that as a result of having created that rule, that now that would age out of the WIP learning data, and you would see a similar trend here of over time, as now that people are no longer hitting that boundary. Again, backup screenshots, so in case you want to go look at the deck later, you can see all the same information that I'm sharing with you now. Device health is a brand new component to Windows Analytics. So like I said earlier, if you add device health to your workspace today, the first two things that you'll see is that device reliability section and the Windows Information Protection section. We're just getting started. I hope that in each of your minds there's some gears turning and saying, what about, I have this, my users complain about this scenario, or they complain about this scenario. I hope you're all having those what about thoughts right now, because that's what we're having as a team. Now that we've built this infrastructure, now that we have the ability to expose device health information, as a cloud service, we're in a position where we can iterate and keep adding more scenarios fairly quickly. So I'm going to show you the next couple that are coming online here over the next few weeks or months. And then there's a long tail beyond that I'd love to talk with you all about, maybe not so much in this forum, maybe down on the expo floor, about additional scenarios that matter to you and to your environment. What does device health mean to you? What does device health mean to you, to your users? Well, let's start with a couple that are about to go live. So just like we were covering device level crashes, yeah, what's the question? Soon. Yeah, soon. So just like we were covering device level kernel mode crashes, we also want to cover user mode crashes. And particularly, the apps that your users use the most. It's interesting, it turns out that if you just look at the raw stream of user mode crashes on a device, like looking at the event log or looking what you might gather by scraping the event logs with a management utility, turns out there's little processes, little background things crashing all the time, and no one cares. It's not affecting anyone. So what we've tried to do here is filter all of that, get rid of most of the noise, and only show things that feel like apps. What you would think of as an app crashing. So we only show things that have user interaction, not background processes or little utility things that no one would notice if it's crashing or not. So for those apps, and you can see I've got some fake app names in this case, you can see which ones are used on the most devices. That helps to prioritize which ones I want to drill in and see a detailed report on. And then once I've chosen an app and I want to drill into that, we can see a detailed report for that app. So here I've made up the name Contoso Sales, but imagine your favorite app here. Imagine, Photoshop or some line of business app that's really important to you, or Office app, whatever the case may be. Whatever, insert your favorite app here and imagine this report describing the app. So walking through this a little bit, what message are we trying to tell here? And the thing that, in my experience, IT cares about when you're looking at a given topic like app reliability or app stability is there something I can do about it? Right? Some abstract number doesn't mean that much to me. What means a lot to me is there something I can do about it? For example, is it worse in this office versus that office? Is it worse in Boston than New York? Because then I can think, oh, well, there's something special about Boston I can go work on. Or is it worse on this version versus that version? Or is it worse, did it get worse Thursday versus Tuesday? Because that, I rolled out a new antivirus definition or something. And so those are the dimensions that we want to help you to explore here with this default visualization, and then of course you can explore more on your own. So the top level row gives you a summary for that app. How many devices was it used on, and how many of those devices was there either a crash or a hang, which is what we mean by incidents in this prototype. Crash, of course, the application stops unexpectedly. Hang, by hang we mean specifically hangs that Windows knows about. So this is where the app has stopped responding to user input. You get the white window and the not responding in the title, like that kind of hang. There could be hangs that are entirely internal to the app that Windows knows nothing about, and we wouldn't report on those here. So we show you the general summary as well as trends, and this is our top requested feature. Anytime we expose any data to customers, the first thing they ask for is trends, because we want to know, did it get worse on Thursday versus Tuesday, because that corresponds to something that we know we did in the environment. Even if this report doesn't know that you made an antivirus change on Wednesday, and can make those connections and solve problems. So we show a long-term trend, which is smoothed out over 14 days like the driver case. We also show a one-day trend, which is going to be much more volatile to answer the question more so, did it get bad today? As we scroll down, the other set of dimensions that we expose by default here are how does the combination of the app version and the OS version relate to the app stability? So the story that's being told here in this table, the app and OS versions table, is that for this app, in my environment, running on Windows 1607, things are pretty good. There's not that many devices with incidents, and that's true of my environment as well as the environment as well as the broader enterprise space anonymized across all customers. We can see that crash rates are fairly low for that app and that OS version, and it's widely deployed thanks to our friends from Ready for Windows. But we can see that other combinations are not so great. Like app version 4.2, it ran great on 1607, not so great on 1703. I'm having incidents in my environment, and it looks like ecosystem-wide, people just don't deploy that combination. It's just sort of not done. And so I'm in some weird special corner that I don't want to be in. I want to get back on the industry mainstream. And this table tells us that the industry mainstream is to deploy app version 4.3 on 1703. And I have only a small population in my environment, but it's looking okay. And more broadly, we can see that for the ecosystem, both by the commercial average as well as the ecosystem adoption columns, that that combination seems to work well for people. So that's what I'm going to prioritize in my environment. We started out with a login example of the, got the spinning donut. So turn your machine on at a certain intersection on your way to work. So the next thing that we're going to start to explore, start to expose through device health is logon scenarios. Now logon is a big, complicated, multi-layered thing. You've got authentication, you've got user profile loads, there's network stuff going on, there's group policy, and so on and so on. Well, because we're a cloud service, we have the luxury of taking an iterative approach to this and, eating the elephant one bite at a time or whatever that metaphor is. So where we're starting with this to approach logon health is at the beginning on the authentication side. And then the plan is to add more and more of the end-to-end login experience over time. And I'm glad that we started here because this is where the most innovation has come to Windows in recent years. You know, last year-ish, maybe a little before that, we started talking about let's get everybody off of passwords, right? Let's move to modern credentials. Let's move to a world without passwords because passwords have terrible security properties and they're high cost. They drive, you know, help desk volume. Let's get people onto next generation credentials where there's a TPM on your motherboard that can securely manage a private key, and then all you need is a local gesture like a face unlock or biometric to grant access to that. It sort of acts like a smart card, but it's way easier. So the first time that I heard that pitch from the Windows guys that were developing that feature, I was just blown away. I was like, this is great. This is the future. No one's ever going to use a password again. We're all going to be using, not weird old biometrics that were easy to fool, but like modern biometrics that are tied to TPM and next generation credentials. This is great. But of course, reality is more complicated than that. In reality, it's still a great scenario. I use it every day. But, well, now we have a new set of dependencies as well. What if your fingerprint scanner doesn't work that well? What if your face recognition camera is, doing something funky? So the first wave of logon health views that we're going to expose are all about exploring that, of understanding how are people interacting with these different options for logging on, and what can I do to make their experience better? So right off the bat, we can see which authentication methods people are attempting to use, and this is going to reflect very much what sort of policies you pushed out, what sorts of hardware are out there. If you're actively trying to move people away from passwords toward a next generation credential, or whether it's just a few people out there, sort of experimenting on their own. You can see what methods people are using and what their success or failure rates are. So you can make adjustments accordingly. So let's click through a bit and get some additional details. Again, trending, we can see how people are using this particular credential method, whether it's on the uptick, whether it's on the downswing, and some starting to cross into diagnostic information about, how can I make this experience better? Are there camera errors? Are there other errors that people are encountering? And so as we go down the page, we get to, as we go down the page, we get additional, should have zoomed in advance, there we go. Additional details about what's driving people's experience on a technical level that we could do something about as IT pros. Whether it's problems with TPM provisioning or problems with a hello camera, whatever the case may be. I can see what's causing people to run into obstacles. I can remove those obstacles so that I can continue the journey to get to next generation credentials and reduce or eliminate passwords in the enterprise. The other thing that frequent requests that we get, and you'll see this pop up in a lot of our reports, is summarizing things by model. And you might say, well, if I'm talking about password failures, why should I care about model? But of course, once we bring in all these other things like fingerprint readers or cameras, then we start to care about model a lot. And maybe if I can see that there's a problem on a particular model, okay, now I know what to do. I need to go update this driver or something to get people unblocked. And you'll see that spectrum reflected over and over in Windows Analytics more broadly, as well as device health, where let's start from a really high-level summary that's just kind of giving you a sense of how are things going, as well as being able to drill through, not to debug-level diagnostic information. I think it's the wrong context for that, but at least to sort of error-level diagnostic information, so you get a sense of, okay, so 90% of things are succeeding, 10% are failing, and of that 10%, most of those are failing in this way. So now I can go take some action, just like the Microsoft IT driver example. There's some action that I can go take that's going to benefit the largest number of people and benefit my organization. And with that, Let's welcome Andy back to the stage, who's going to bring us home and talk about how we put this all together and put it into practice.
All right, thanks. So we've heard all about device health, which is all great. Some of you guys might be wondering, all right, how do I get started? What are the requirements? What do I need? So first of all, you actually need to turn on the telemetry level of the devices that you want to see within OMS. You want to turn it to enhanced. So enhanced essentially adds additional insights such as app usage, performance, additional device reliability metrics, and more. And it also includes essentially the basic events as well. And once you've got that set, the next requirement is you need to have an E3, E5 Windows license subscription. And this requirement is only needed when we GA, which we're planning for pretty soon. And one thing important to note here is all the data that we send up to OMS, all the data for Windows Analytics, it's 0 rated. So what that means is there's no charge to you to push that data into OMS, and there's no data cap limits for the telemetry that we send.
I'm nervous about going all the way to enhanced. Is there a lower level that I could possibly use in your upcoming 17.10 release?
That's a good question. So we actually are coming out with this new telemetry level that we're calling Enhanced Minus. So this is essentially including our basic events that we're using, plus all the events required for Windows Analytics. So minus all the questionable events that we collect in Enhanced, and only the things that we need for Windows Analytics. And that's what we can turn on coming in our 17.10 release of Windows.
Will they be fully documented and visible in the viewer tool like the basic events?
Yes, yes, they will be. Good question. Thank you.
I like this guy. Can he keep going?
Whatever management solution that you have today, you can push this configuration onto your Windows devices. Sorry. I believe it's what type of device configurations, depending on how you're managed, can you actually get device health. Is that right?
Well, specifically, Azure Stack would be sufficient to be collecting the telemetry cloud service, cloud presence in order to.
So I can take that one. So the Windows telemetry goes from Windows devices to Microsoft telemetry service. And we've always done that we've done it for years to find bugs and fix problems and standard telemetry type scenarios. What's new and novel about Windows Analytics is that we're taking that same telemetry data that would normally leave the machines and come to Microsoft to for us to find problems and look for solutions, and shunting it back to you in the form of an OMS workspace, so that you can see problems and and deploy solutions. So Azure Stack doesn't particularly have a role there because the data is coming straight to the Microsoft telemetry service, which wouldn't be part of Azure Stack. Now, one interesting thing would be to say if Azure Stack at some point were to include log analytics or OMS, which I don't think it does now, but conceivably could in the future, is like, could you present the data through an Azure Stack-based OMS workspace as opposed to a cloud-based OMS workspace? Maybe. That scenario hasn't come up yet. But either way, the data would still come to Microsoft first because it's telemetry data. So there's no on-prem, there's no fully on-prem version of this.
So the question was, how about devices without internet connection? Well, in order to send telemetry up to OMS, you need an internet connection, right? So a lot of these events, when you're offline, will get batched into one piece, and then once you actually get network connection, it'll be sent up all the way to OMS.
Network connection is different than internet connection. Let's say you have tens of thousands of cache registers that you don't want.
So this is a cloud service. So it's up to you whether you want your devices to connect to it or not. And we try to make that as that works for as many people as possible by having good documentation, for example, on what the events are and exactly which endpoints they are. So you don't need, say, unfiltered internet access. You just need to be able to send data to specific endpoints. So we do everything that we can to make that the cloud part of it as enterprise compatible as we can, through documentation, and here's the constraints that you can put on it. But at the end of the day, we know we won't get everybody, right? Like, there are organizations that aren't allowed to talk to each other within their own organization, much less talk to Microsoft. And so we know that there are some cases where people will just choose not to connect, and that's part of the tax of being a cloud service. But it is a cloud service.
Is there any plans to move this to Windows 7 as well, for those of us who are still working to get to 10?
Upgrade readiness is all about getting from 7 to 10. Device health is 10 only. And people have loads of questions about this stuff because it's good that the wheels are turning. I'm going to encourage you to come visit us on the expo floor for questions, as I think Andy's got a couple more points that he wants to address that are for everybody before we get back into questions.
Right, so we have a couple more slides until we go into questions, so please save that for later. So real quick, once you fulfill those 2 requirements, you have set the telemetry level to enhanced or enhanced minus upcoming in Windows 17.0.10. And you also have an E3, E5 subscription. The next step is to actually go ahead and set up an OMS workspace. So you can go ahead and search Windows Operations Management Suite, and then create your own workspace with your organization account. The next step, once you create the workspace, is you're going to have to link it to an Azure subscription. And you can either use an existing Azure subscription that you have, or you can create a 1-month free trial. And it's just a requirement to have that subscription for the OMS workspace. Again, if you're using Windows Analytics, you're not getting charged for any of the data that gets sent. So once you create your OMS workspace, one thing to take note is the commercial ID. The commercial ID, essentially, you can find that commercial ID within the settings of that workspace. What the commercial ID means is it essentially ties the devices that you want to see within OMS to that OMS workspace. And you can push the commercial ID to your devices through whatever management solution that you have, whether it be group policy, SCCM, or MDM. All that's well documented that I'm going to point to later. So once you have your OMS workspace set up and you have a commercial ID, the next step is just to deploy it to a small sample of devices, just so you can kind of get the taste of Windows Analytics. You can add upgrade readiness, update compliance, plus device health, and you can just try it on a small subset of devices. And then once you're comfortable with the data that you see in OMS, the next step is just to plan for a wider deployment across all your machines. So as I mentioned, the next steps for all of you, we really want you guys to just try out device health. We've included links on here to look at Windows Analytics as a whole, what device is, it essentially gives you an overview of what we talked about today, plus how to get started. So really want to hear all your feedback. There's a lot of questions today, so again, if we can't answer your questions here today, just feel free to reach out to us on our booth. It's right under the Modern Workplace, and it's Windows Analytics. And with that, open for the questions. Thank you.
I think he's been waiting the longest. Can you use the microphone so people can?
Please line up.
So we talked about the telemetry a second ago and how it goes out. But have you guys thought about adopting the Office telemetry model, where we can bring it to a centralized database and then allow that to go up? Because there are some organizations, and you talked about them, that are maybe more secure, where they're only allowing one internet connection out.
So there's a couple of layers to that. One is, like, would we have an on-prem service to consolidate all the data and then upload it from there? We tried that in Windows 7 and didn't work out so well for people, although not to say that's an invalid idea. So the current model is not to try to have an on-prem service where you would consolidate and review all the data and then manually say, okay, this is okay to upload. We do support proxies and authenticated proxies, although getting the configuration right can be a little bit nuanced. But the current model is for the data, barring going through a proxy or a layer like that, is it connects directly from from each endpoint to the Microsoft telemetry service.
Sure. You should talk to the Office team about that. They're nailing that in that regard, for switching from previous versions of Office up to O365, where organizations can't run add-ons and stuff like that. That telemetry is amazing, and the model of centralizing and then sending it out is working really well.
So I think in terms of streamlining how to work together with Windows and Office, I mean, I think from a strategic standpoint, if you look at all of our emphasis on Microsoft 365, you could certainly imagine a future where Office and Windows telemetry have tighter relationships with each other. Whether or not that will involve, to what extent that will involve an on-prem hop, to your point specifically, I think is to be determined. But thanks for the feedback. We'll spend some more time on that.
Thanks.
I've got a question about the telemetry or the analytics session that's at 2:15.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be more in depth, or is it going to help us out some more to understand what's going on? Or
So I believe that's the Windows Analytics.
review of Windows Analytics new tools to help improve Windows experiences?
Yeah, so that's across all three topic areas within Windows Analytics. So here we are mostly focused on the device health third.
Okay.
That session's more about overview of all three.
Thank you.
Question over there.
I have a question. We use Windows telematics. We are a big enterprise. One of the, I would say, two of the pain points what we are having is all the agents, when they boot, they try to send the data, collect and send the data. Is there a plan to somehow schedule that? The second related question is the number of reports. When we go to reports and extract as a CSV or something, it has a limitation currently to 5,000. Is there a plan to elevate that as well?
Yeah, so so two layers of that. The question is about what's the timing of the uploads and can that be throttled? And you mentioned boot. And then the other question is exporting the data. So to the first question, the Universal Telemetry Client Server, the UTC service in Windows, which is in charge of uploading all the telemetry, is a pretty robust piece of code at this point. It's running on many millions of machines. And it has good logic about caching things if you're offline and trying again later, but not trying too many times so it doesn't fill up the machine with cache data, give up after a time. So it's pretty robust. However, if you're running into scenarios where you don't like the behavior, you feel like it's uploading too much data at one time or something, let's talk more let's talk more about that in depth so we can zero in on your scenario specifically and see if there's something that needs attention. To the second question about exporting the data, that kind of brings up a broader scenario, which is that, so we have these user interfaces in OMS, like the graphs that we showed you. And I think those are great ways to get started with the data, because it's, we give you a guided tour. However, the feedback that we consistently get from customers is that, okay, that's great, but my all-up IT reporting that like my CTO wants to look at is in Power BI. So I need a way to connect from the OMS data to other places like Power BI to take elements of this and integrate it into other reports, and that involves exporting the data or making connections. In the past, that's been very painful. There was a 5,000 record limit, and there were other challenges. We're doing some work to make that easier over time. There's some changes happening in OMS to make the data export story much smoother over the next couple of months. As well as we're working on things like, say, documentation or templates to make it easier. So you could say, oh, here's how to get started with Power BI integration. You don't have to figure it all out on your own. So it's been painful in the past. The expectation is it will be substantially less painful in the future to do that integration.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to follow up, so in the current environment, if this is urgent today, like you need a way to work through like the 5,000 record limit, there are ways to work around it. So for example, you could have a script that does, get 5,000 and then runs again, and skips 5,000, gets the next 5,000. So there are workarounds today, and we can talk about those more in depth offline if you'd like. But the big picture is over the next few months, things should get much easier.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I answer that specific question? The new limit with the new log analytics workspace is 10K. So when you move to the new log analytics booster backend, the limit's now 10K.
Okay. I hadn't. We need to add that to our docs. Thanks.
Thank you.
Question.
Go ahead.
Center. Yeah, so I think you touched on the app reliability side, but what are your plans for using the data for the greater good, crowdsourcing? Your MSIT example, I'd love to know in my organization that Dell network driver, whatever, was causing lots of crashes. If you're seeing that across lots of customers, is there a way that I'll be able to see that across the greater Windows environment, or know that an app, my Contoso app that I'm doesn't work so well on 1703. Anyway, so what
Yeah.
are the kind of thinking about crowdsourcing and sharing that data more broadly?
So there's a couple of layers to that exists today or very soon, and then there's potentially more that we could do in the future from a community standpoint. The pieces that exist now, or at least are about to exist, are there's this great service called Ready for Windows where we can do things like look up for a given application version or across a set of application versions which Windows versions have people deployed it widely on, and it seems to be working there. So that information exists in a standalone format. You can go to you just search for Ready for Windows. There's a site on a page on Microsoft.com where you can look that up. That same information also gets infused in Windows Analytics in various ways. It shows up in upgrade readiness. Our hope is to expose it also here in the application stability report. There's additional layers as well. So for example, the failure data that comes in from applications, there are also reports that go out to, say, software vendors to say, hey, your app is crashing X amount of the time so that they can do something about it. That's outside of the Windows Analytics scope. That's in Dev Center and ways that we relate to software vendors. Another piece to that is, in some cases, it's tiny, I apologize in this report, but we have these commercial average figures. So you can see how often is something failing in my environment, as well as how often is it failing across all enterprise customers. So that also plays into, is it just me or is it everybody?
And I saw that on the app, so I didn't see it in the kernel crashes.
Yeah, it's there as well.
That is there, okay.
Yeah. And then I think the final piece that we're not there yet, but we'd love to get there, is to have more community engagement, both from the IT Pro community as well as the broader Microsoft and ISVs and everybody. So in a perfect future world, I would love a case where on that row where it says, this version is crashing this amount and here's the failure, I would love that you click on that and it goes to a KB article or something that says that, yeah, we know about this, we're working on it, or HP's working on it, or whoever is working on it, and here's a workaround in the meantime. We're not there yet, but I think to your point about sort of community engagement and crowdsourcing, I think there's clearly a path forward there, and but we've got some engineering work to do to connect all those pieces.
But it's in your vision.
Yeah.
Long term. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that.
All right, final question.
It's related to your licensing model. You mentioned it's a E3, E5 subscription. What would happen if a customer had an EA and had already the Windows 10 as on-premise? Is there that zero SKU thing also applicable that was mentioned in the keynote?
So it's not a separate add-on. It's not a separate thing to buy. Even as it's just the way that device health is conceptualized as a value add to your existing Windows Enterprise licensing. So if you have Windows Enterprise, like for example, let's say as part of your EA you bought Secure Productive Enterprise E3, which includes Windows E3, Windows Enterprise, then you have access to device health. There's no additional steps.
Okay, but not when it's just Windows licensed regularly as an E3 level.
Yes, so Windows Enterprise license, so Windows E3, typically people don't buy Windows E3 by itself, they buy it as part of a bundle like SPE E3, but regardless of how you buy it, as long as you have Windows Enterprise licensing like Windows E3 or Windows E5, then you have rights to device health.
Great, thank you.
Great. All right, thank you. If you have any other questions, feel free to talk to us offline right after this presentation or stop by our booth. Thank you.
Yep, thanks everybody.